Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ten Under 10 on the Hoosier Network. I'm Graham Nash with Adam Oppenheim, and this is the final men's show of the spring from us here at Big Ten Under 10. We're going to start today's show on the diamond as per usual. Here are your scores from baseball over the past week. Unranked Iowa still sits atop the Big Ten standings and are coming off a huge series win against the Indiana Hoosiers. Iowa swept IU and run-ruled them in 2 of 3 games. Doesn't look like Iowa is stopping anytime soon. 13th ranked Oregon is the highest ranked team in the Big Ten, and they showed why last week. The Ducks hosted and swept the 3rd best team in the country, that being their in-state rivals, Oregon State. Following the sweeping suit, number 15 UCLA swept Penn State in Los Angeles last weekend. They currently sit 2nd in the conference behind Iowa and just ahead of Oregon. However, Oregon is not in sole possession of 3rd at the moment. But who are they tied with? Well, that would be the USC Trojans. USC traveled to Minneapolis over the weekend to play Minnesota, and guess what? USC swept them as well. So, Adam, we're going to turn to you. We could talk about all the matchups from the weekend, but they were pretty clear cut. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Instead, I want to talk big picture. First off, 4 of the top 5 teams in Big Ten baseball are West Coast teams. Do you think that this is the new look for Big Ten baseball moving forward?
I mean, I think it is. And the truth is, these West Coast teams are at a disadvantage because they're going to the Midwest. They're going to the East Coast against a couple Big Ten teams. And they're winning those games. You talk about the time zone difference. Yes, the other Big Ten teams have to go out to the West Coast, but more likely of the Midwest teams going out to the West Coast is the West Coast teams moving time zones, 2 or 3 hours. So that's a big difference, and they're the best teams in the conference. You talk about team ERA, 4 out of the top 5 in the Big Ten are West Coast teams, and the only other team is Iowa, and there's a reason they're right at the top of the Big Ten. It's because of pitching. When you pitch well and have an ace, like all 4 of these West Coast teams have, you're in a position to win. We saw it in the Iowa-Indiana series. We talked about last week. I was very strong on, the hitting is pretty equal, but the pitching, there's a big difference. And that series showed why, because against good pitching, you're not going to be able to score 10-plus runs every game. You need to be able to rely on pitching when it gets down the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament. Those become those 2-1, 3-1 games, which are sort of rare in college baseball, but in the Big Ten, that's what it takes to win. That's why the 4 West Coast teams, they've been extremely impressive this year.
They have, and I want to continue our talk about the West Coast teams, specifically looking at USC and Oregon. Can the Trojans overtake the Ducks and snag that 3rd place spot?
I think it's possible. They're tied right now at this point, and they're on a 6-game winning streak, are the Trojans. But USC has had a pretty easy schedule, and coming up, they have a much harder schedule, and you're talking about an Oregon team that faces Washington at home, which is beatable, and then Iowa on the road. Those are 2 tough teams. Oregon is a slightly better hitting and pitching team, and I think even if USC was to, finish over Oregon in terms of the Big Ten standings, I'm still taking Oregon over them as a team, and I think that's the more important question. Which team would you take on a neutral field, Oregon or USC? I'm going to take Oregon because I think their pitching is slightly better, especially their bullpen, and then their hitting is slightly better in terms of power, in terms of average. Those are the small margins that I lean towards the team in Eugene. But USC has been extremely impressive this year. And all these West Coast teams, I mean, they're invading the Big Ten. And it's trouble because we talked about last year, the last few years before it was Maryland, it was Indiana near the top, it was Nebraska. Those teams are good, but now you see what a great team is like. And that's an Oregon team. That's a UCLA team. That's an Iowa team. It's been impressive.
It really has. I want to finish off our discussion talking about Iowa, like you just mentioned, because, at this point, it is impressive. There's a lot of criticism surrounding the Hawkeyes saying, they haven't played any good teams. When are they going to play something? But they just swept Indiana in pretty dominant fashion, not saying that Indiana is top the table, but still better than who they have played. In your mind, has the narrative surrounding Iowa changed after that series?
It should.
Okay.
Will it? I'm not sure. I've been on the Iowa bandwagon for a long time. I think I've talked about it for probably a month to a month and a half about this team is one of the top teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. And I'm talking, top 15, top 20. They're not a top 5 team. And now they pretty much shut down a top 3 offense in the Big Ten and hold them to 3 runs in 3 games. That's extremely impressive. 2 games ended in 7 innings. And the other game, that was game 1, they won 2-1 in 10 innings. They have the best pitcher, I think, in the Big Ten, Cade Obermueller, who's been absolutely terrific. He threw 5 2/3 against Indiana, had 4 walks. That's the only reason he didn't go deeper into the ball game, like we've seen many times this year, him go 6 or 7 innings, a lot of those being scoreless. And I talked about these two teams being really far apart pitching-wise, but I think, first of all, they still are. Indiana's still here. I'll keep it on camera. And Iowa's still here. But now the hitting, I thought it was equal. I think Iowa's a better hitting team as well. I mean, you talk about Indiana has a couple of their top hitters and Corbin Dickerson and Devin Taylor, but Iowa, all throughout the lineup, they were able to score in every game besides game 1. And although they still haven't played a really strong strength in the schedule, they have at Washington coming up, home versus Oregon State, they're 3rd ranked in the country, and home versus Oregon to finish the season. If Iowa finishes those games, I want to say like 6-3, I feel really confident in this Hawkeyes team.
All right, there you go. Well, the rankings just came out actually for this week, and Iowa still not receiving votes.
Yeah, what's going on?
So
committee.
We'll see if
Can
that.
you hear me?
We'll see if that changes. Adam is pleading. He's pleading for the committee. We're going to switch gears, hit the court to talk some tennis, which just competed in the Big Ten tournament. Here's what happened. Ohio State, Michigan State, and UCLA were the only nationally ranked teams entering the tournament, and it came down to 6th-ranked Ohio State and 22nd-ranked UCLA in the championship. In dramatic fashion, UCLA took down OSU to win their first ever Big Ten championship. It was as close could be, as the Bruins won 4 matches to the Buckeyes 3, but man, UCLA is in phenomenal shape heading into the NCAA tournament. They have won 8 straight and took down the highest-ranked Big Ten team in the country. Big Ten golf also played in their championship tournament last weekend, and UCLA also won that championship. Something about those country club sports in UCLA, something weird's happening. It was a huge weekend for the boys in blue out on the West Coast. They shot 2 over at Baltimore Country Club, just beating Illinois by 1 shot. By the way, it was a total 2-horse race as Michigan State came in at 3rd at 14 over, 11 shots behind Illinois, who finished in 2nd. UCLA and Iowa are the 2 highest-ranked Big Ten teams. They are currently 12th and 13th in the country, respectively. And that is going to wrap up today's show. Huge thanks to our producer Colin Dusek and teleprompter Henry Thuss for making all of this possible. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at B1G_under10, and check back in later this week for our next episode and last episode of Big Ten Under 10.